Hey guys, tonight we slip back into the chill stone corridors of a castle in the Kingdom of Hungary, around the year 1575. The wind howls across the Carpathian hills, carrying with it the smell of pine forests and smoke from peasant hearths. Torches sputter against the damp, moss-stained walls, while in the great hall banners of crimson and black hang heavy, their silken folds barely stirring. It is here that a young noblewoman, not yet hardened into the figure that legend will curse, takes her first steps toward power. You stand with her at the threshold of marriage, her jewels glinting in the candlelight, her hair wound into elaborate coils that shimmer like dark silk. Outside the chapel, the murmurs of priests and courtiers tangle with the creak of wooden pews. Everyone watches her, measuring her worth as a bride, as an alliance, as a pawn. You probably won't survive this story if you think beauty is ever just skin deep. It has always been a currency more lethal than swords. If you want to follow more twisted, unsettling stories like the queen who bathed in blood to stay young, subscribe now. It helps bring these shadows of history to light. And in the comments, let me know your location and the time on your clock right now. It's always haunting to see where in the world you're listening to tales like this one. Sleep may be slow to come after this, but stay with me to the end, because even horror can turn into lullaby. Now let us step closer into her beginnings. She was born into one of the most powerful families of her age, the Bathory's lords of vast estates, tied by blood to kings, feared by peasants, respected by nobles. Her cradle was not a place of innocence, but of calculation. From the moment of her birth, her life was inscribed in ledgers. Dowries negotiated, alliances weighed, estates prepared. She was taught to read not simply scripture but the Latin of contracts, the poetry of Virgil, the letters of humanists. Few noble women of her age could match her education, but it was not given out of generosity. Knowledge was another weapon, one her family knew she would wield in the brutal politics of Central Europe. Her childhood was gilded, but not soft. You watch her move through cold chambers lined with hunting trophies, past servants who bow deeply but avoid her eyes. Her tutors drill her in languages and manners. Her governess scolds her for any lapse. She learns early that the world does not forgive mistakes, not for peasants, and certainly not for noble women destined to secure dynasties. She is clever, ambitious, quick to learn, but also restless. Behind her eyes burns a need not just to survive, but to command. At 12, she is betrothed, as so many noble girls are, to a powerful count, Ferenc Nadasdy, heir to immense wealth and military renown. The marriage is arranged as alliance, a joining of estates that would make them among the most powerful couples in Hungary. She is paraded before relatives, measured not in affection but in acreage, soldiers, and coin. And yet, even at 12, she understands the rules of the game. She does not cry, does not protest. Instead, she studies the faces around her, memorizing smiles that are false, promises that are hollow. Her poise unnerves even the adults. The wedding, when it comes 4 years later, is a spectacle of wealth and ambition. Imagine the stone church draped in banners of red and gold, the air thick with incense, the sound of choirs echoing into the rafters. The bride, dressed in brocade heavy with pearls, moves like a figure carved from marble. The groom, a hardened soldier already nicknamed the Black Knight of Hungary for his cruelty in war, stands beside her with sword at his hip, his eyes glinting with both pride and warning. The vows are exchanged, the rings slipped onto trembling fingers, the kiss sealed under vaulted arches. Outside, peasants line the muddy streets, staring at the gilded carriage that carries the new countess and her husband away. To them, she is a distant figure, almost mythical, untouchable, beautiful, powerful. But inside the carriage, you see her fingers clench around the embroidered cushion, her eyes staring at the horizon. She knows she is not marrying a man, but a destiny. The castle she enters as bride is no romantic fortress, but a looming stronghold on a hill, its towers jutting against the sky like spears. Its halls are cold, its windows narrow, its stones centuries old. The servants bow as she passes, whispering about the new mistress, their voices tinged with awe and fear. She wastes no time in asserting herself. Within days she reorganizes the household, demands inventories of stores, inspects the kitchens, questions the steward. She is not content to be ornament. She intends to rule. Her husband, often absent on campaigns, leaves her in charge of vast estates. This is both burden and opportunity. She oversees peasants who till the land, judges disputes brought before her, orders punishments for those who disobey. You watch her seated on a carved oak chair, peasants kneeling at her feet, her voice calm but sharp as she delivers verdicts. Already there are whispers of her severity. To her, justice is not tempered with mercy, it is power exercised without hesitation. And yet she is still young, still bound by the expectations of wifehood. She dresses in gowns of velvet, attends mass with solemn devotion, bears children into the world. She plays her part flawlessly, but in her private moments, when the halls are quiet and only candlelight flickers against her reflection, she studies her face in the mirror. She touches the smoothness of her skin, traces the curve of her lips, examines the brightness of her eyes. She is beautiful, undeniably so, and she knows it. But she also knows beauty is fragile, slipping away like water through clenched hands. This knowledge begins as simple vanity: powders to whiten the skin, oils to smooth the hair, herbs to brighten the eyes, common enough among noble women. But for her, beauty is not vanity alone. It is survival. It is weapon. It is proof of superiority. Her family's power may be vast, her estates endless, but in her world a woman's face can command as much as armies. She resolves that hers will never fade, that time will never take from her what destiny demands she keep. It is here, in these beginnings, in her noble birth, her strategic marriage, her cold halls of authority, and her early obsession with beauty, that the seeds of horror are sown. You can almost see them sprouting behind her eyes, like dark shoots breaking through stone. She is not yet the woman who will terrify Europe with tales of blood, but the path has been laid, and as you leave her chamber tonight, the mirror catching her reflection in the flicker of candlelight, you sense it. The young bride is already studying herself as though she were relic and idol both. Her beauty will not be allowed to fade, no matter the cost. The castle of Székely rises bleakly against the northern Hungarian hills, its grey towers like fingers clawing at the sky. To step inside is to enter not a home but a machine of power. Every stone, every corridor, every chamber designed to enforce order and hierarchy. You walk with the young countess as she learns to command this labyrinth, and you see how quickly she adapts to her new domain. The household is enormous. Servants scurry along the flagstoned halls, maids balancing pitchers of water, boys hauling firewood, cooks bellowing orders from smoky kitchens. Guards stand at every gate, their halberds gleaming, their eyes sharp for intruders. Peasants arrive daily at the lower court, hats in hands, trembling as they plead their cases. Above them all, the countess presides. She is not content to leave authority to stewards or bailiffs. She insists on overseeing everything herself. Mornings begin with ritual. Her ladies dress her in gowns heavy with embroidery, braid her dark hair into elaborate coils, fasten jewels at her throat. She walks the great hall like a queen, pausing to note the placement of tapestries, the polish on silverware, the posture of servants. Every detail matters, for in her world appearances are power. Afterward come the duties of estate management. She hears disputes between peasants, arguments over fields, accusations of theft, petitions for mercy. Her judgments are sharp, her punishments swift. To a man who stole grain, she orders whipping. To a woman accused of adultery, she imposes humiliation before the village. These sentences shock you, but to her they are natural, even necessary. Justice, as she understands it, is not mercy, but deterrence. By midday, she tours the castle itself. She inspects storerooms of salted meat and grain, counts barrels of wine, examines stables where horses snort and stamp. She questions her steward about accounts, demanding precise numbers. She berates a maid for failing to sweep dust from the chapel floor, strikes another for spilling broth. Already you see the seeds of cruelty, not wild outbursts, but cold, measured corrections. To her, Order is maintained only through fear. When her husband is home, the castle fills with soldiers, their boots striking the stone in unison, their laughter echoing down the halls. Ferenc Nardesti is notorious for his brutality in war, impaling prisoners, burning villages, leaving corpses as warnings. The Countess learns from him. When he rides off again, she remains, adopting some of his soldiers' discipline as her own. Whispers circulate that she is as harsh in command as he is in battle. The evenings are filled with ceremony. Banquets grown with roasted meats, venison seasoned with garlic and pepper, bread baked golden in the ovens. Guests dine beneath the glow of chandeliers, their goblets brimming with dark wine. The Countess sits at the head, her smile controlled, her eyes always watchful. She notes which noble lords drink too much, which ladies whisper too closely, which ambassadors look nervous. Information is currency, and she spends it wisely. In her private chamber, however, she reveals another side. There, mirrors gleam in the flickering candlelight, and jars of powders and oils clutter her table. She studies her reflection obsessively, smoothing creams onto her skin, plucking stray hairs, testing remedies whispered by servants or healers. Honey for softness, vinegar for clarity, herbs boiled into strange-smelling concoctions. Beauty is no pastime, it is labor, almost war. And though she is still young, you can feel her fear of age already haunting her. This fear grows sharper whenever younger women surround her, maids with unlined faces, village girls with fresh cheeks, noble ladies who blush easily. She notices them all, and she feels the sting of comparison. Her eyes linger, not with admiration but with envy, as though their youth steals something from her. Each smile of a maid, each compliment offered to a guest, becomes needle and thorn. Her pride demands she remain supreme in beauty, untouchable, eternal. Her authority over the household allows her to test boundaries. When a maid tears her gown while dressing her, she strikes the girl with a hairbrush until welts rise. When another spills water, she forces her to stand for hours without rest. These punishments, while cruel, are explained as discipline, but you notice the flicker in her eyes when she delivers them, a spark of satisfaction, as if cruelty itself brings her strange comfort. Beyond the castle walls, villagers begin to mutter. They complain of harsh taxes, of brutal overseers, of punishments that seem excessive, yet they fear her too deeply to resist. When she rides through the villages in her carriage, they bow low, crossing themselves as though to ward off misfortune. Children hide behind skirts, men remove their hats with trembling hands. She notices their fear, and rather than discomforting her, it pleases her. Fear, she believes, is the surest foundation of loyalty. The castle thus becomes both fortress and prison. Its thick walls keep invaders out, but they also keep secrets in. Behind those stone walls, the Countess rules absolutely, unchecked by husband or council. Her ladies obey, her servants bow, her peasants kneel. She has everything: wealth, power, beauty. Yet still, she fears the one enemy no fortress can withstand time. In quiet moments, when the candles burn low, you see her trace her reflection in the mirror, searching for the faintest line, the slightest blemish. She whispers prayers, not for salvation, but for preservation. And though she does not yet know it, this obsession will soon consume her, twisting her authority into horror, transforming her fear into acts that will stain her name forever. For now, though she is simply mistress of a vast domain, feared by her peasants, envied by her peers, obsessed with her own reflection. The castle echoes with her footsteps, the servants scurry at her command, and the night wind rattles the shutters. But beneath it all, like water seeping into stone, her dread of aging grows, and with it the legend of the queen who would one day bathe in blood begins to take its first dark breath. By the time the Countess reaches her late 20s, her reputation has spread across Hungary. She is known as clever, wealthy, beautiful, and severe. Nobles respect her for her intelligence, priests praise her outward piety, peasants fear her justice. Yet beneath the polish of her public image, you can see the tightening coil of her private obsession, an obsession with youth, with beauty, with control over the one thing even her vast power cannot halt: the march of time. Her husband's frequent absence intensifies this fixation. Ferenc Nardesti spends most of his life campaigning against the Ottoman Turks, commanding troops in brutal battles, carving his reputation as the Black Knight of Hungary. When he returns home, it is with scars, trophies, and stories of cruelty that make even hardened men pale. He teaches her tricks of punishment, how to use needles beneath fingernails, how to smear honey on a prisoner and leave them to insects. She listens with unnerving attentiveness, her dark eyes gleaming. Though she never marches into battle, she absorbs the lessons of brutality like scripture. When he departs again, the castle is hers alone. She rules not just the estate, but the hundreds of peasants bound to its fields, the servants bustling in its kitchens, the guards patrolling its walls. She grows increasingly rigid, demanding absolute obedience in even the smallest tasks. If a maid drops a piece of linen, she slaps her. If a servant girl braids her hair too tightly, she pricks her with a needle. If a scullery maid spills water, she orders her to kneel on frozen ground until her legs tremble. These cruelties are explained away as discipline, yet you notice the flicker of pleasure in her eyes when punishment is carried out. But the true shift begins when she notices, one morning, the faintest crease near her eyes. It is barely visible in the polished mirror, but to her it feels like a chasm. She touches it over and over, her breath quickening, her mind racing. She has powders, ointments, herbs, but none of them erase what she sees. For days she obsesses over it, staring into mirrors until her attendants tremble at the thought of her gaze. Soon her obsession infects her conversations. She demands of her ladies, "Do I look older?" They rush to assure her of her beauty. She forces them to swear her skin is still flawless, her hair still radiant. Yet their assurances only deepen her unease. The more they insist, the more she suspects they are lying. Then comes the story that will echo through centuries. A maid, clumsy in dressing her, tugs too harshly at her hair. The countess, furious, strikes her. The blow leaves the girl bleeding, crimson drops splashing across the countess's hand. She wipes them away, and whether by imagination or accident, she believes her skin looks smoother, younger, where the blood touched. It is a fleeting thought, but it plants itself in her mind with the strength of revelation. If ointments cannot preserve her, perhaps blood can. At first, it is small. She demands that maids scrub her face with cloths soaked in fresh blood from tiny cuts. She tests whether the skin glows brighter afterward. She examines her reflection by candlelight, comparing, judging. Servants whisper in horror, but none dare defy her. Those who resist vanish from the castle halls. Her hunger grows. Soon she insists on bathing her hands in bowls of blood, convinced it tightens her flesh. Then, with a logic both terrible and relentless, she escalates further. If her hands can be rejuvenated, why not her whole body? The castle bathhouse, once a place of warmth and lavender scents, becomes chamber of dread. Maids are ordered to bleed into basins, their faces pale with fear. The countess sinks into crimson water, her eyes closing in ecstasy, convinced that youth itself is seeping back into her pores. The rituals are justified to herself as necessity. She cannot let time win. She cannot allow her beauty, the foundation of her power, to fade. Each scream silenced, each drop spilled, becomes part of her war against age. You watch her standing in the flickering light, her skin glistening, her lips curling into a faint smile. She believes she has found the secret to eternal youth. But cruelty, once unleashed, is never satisfied with small measures. She begins to demand more victims. Servants are dragged from kitchens, peasant girls lured from villages with promises of work. Some vanish without trace, their names forgotten, except in mothers' prayers. Others stumble away broken, their scars hidden beneath sleeves. The castle becomes a place of whispers and dread, its high walls no longer fortress, but prison. Her attendants enable her, some out of loyalty, others out of fear, still others because cruelty, once normalized, numbs the conscience. They fetch the girls, hold them down, clean the stains. They are her accomplices, bound by gold and terror alike. The peasants outside notice. Daughters who leave for service never return. Villagers mutter that the countess drinks blood, that demons walk her halls, that screams echo at night. Priests hear confessions filled with terror, but fear to act against so powerful a woman. Rumors slither into markets, into taverns, across borders. Yet still she continues, convinced not of madness, but of righteousness. Her mirror reflects what she longs to see. She stares at her own face, tracing the smoothness of her skin, smiling at the absence of lines. She believes she is winning, but you, watching, see only the shadows deepen around her eyes, the hollowness grow in her cheek. The blood does not preserve her. It consumes her. She cannot see it, because obsession blinds her. By the time her husband dies of illness in 1604, her cruelty has already taken root like ivy cracking stone. Freed from his shadow, she rules alone, her rituals unchecked. She no longer bothers to hide them as carefully. Whole chambers of the castle reek of iron and rot. Servants vanish by the dozen. The villagers speak openly now, calling her the Blood Countess. Her hunger is bottomless, her fear of age insatiable. And so, what began as a noblewoman's vanity has twisted into legend, a queen in all but name, bathing in blood to stay young. The years after Ferenc Nadezhdy's death mark the beginning of a new, more dangerous phase in the Countess's life. No longer tethered by the presence of her husband, she rules her estates alone. She wears widow's black, her hair veiled, her face pale with grief in public ceremonies. But behind the draped halls of mourning, you see her hands free, her eyes alight with something that is not sorrow but opportunity. The castle of Chate becomes entirely her domain, a stage where her obsession with beauty and youth deepens into obsession with control. Without the check of her husband's authority, her household bends wholly to her will. She expands her retinue, surrounding herself with attendants she trusts absolutely. Women as severe as she, hardened by years of service. These women become her shadows, her enforcers, her accomplices. They fetch the girls, silence the screams, clean the stains from stone floors. Some are rewarded with jewels or privileges, others driven by fear. Together they form a circle of complicity that shields her from suspicion. Her beauty, once admired across Hungary, is now spoken of with unease. Courtiers murmur that she seems untouched by time, her skin pale and unwrinkled even as the years advance. Some attribute it to noble breeding, others to cosmetics, but whispers persist of darker methods. You stand with her before the mirror, watching as she traces her reflection, her lips curling into satisfaction. They age, she murmurs to herself of the girls who serve her, but I do not. Jealousy sharpens this obsession. She cannot bear the sight of youth unscarred. When a maid laughs with cheeks flushed and eyes bright, the Countess's gaze hardens. When a peasant girl arrives with smooth skin and thick hair, her envy becomes almost physical. To her, these girls steal something intangible, something she must reclaim. Her punishments grow crueler, her rituals more elaborate. At first the victims are household servants. A maid who snags her gown is stripped and whipped until blood runs. A chamber girl who braids her hair too tightly is struck with pins until her skin breaks. The Countess insists these are lessons, discipline, justice, but soon the blood is collected deliberately, poured into bowls, smeared upon her face. She begins to believe not only in punishment, but in transformation, that each drop spilled is stolen youth she can graft onto herself. Her attendants enable her escalation. Dorothea Sentas, known as Dorka, is cruel and efficient, her hands steady as she restrains struggling victims. Ilona Zhou, once a nursemaid, becomes administrator of torment, devising new methods to extract blood. A servant named Katerina, young and impressionable, obeys with fearful devotion. Together they create a machinery of cruelty, each part turning because the others cannot stop. When the household supply of maids thins, she casts her gaze outward. Villages in the valley are scoured for peasant girls. Promises of employment, of wages, of shelter lure them through the gates of Chaste. Their mothers weep as they vanish, but none dare challenge the Countess. She is untouchable, her name bound to kings, her wealth vast. To accuse her would be to invite ruin. Yet rumors seep through cracks in the fortress walls. Shepherds speak of hearing screams at night, carried on the wind. Priests whisper of confessions too dark to repeat. Merchants mutter that the castle reeks of iron, that its drains run red after storms. The countryside grows uneasy, but fear silences action. Who can accuse a Bathory and live? Inside the castle, the rituals intensify. The bathhouse becomes chamber of horror, its stone floors slick with crimson, its basins steaming not with water but with blood. The countess reclines in it, sighing as though soothed, convinced that youth seeps into her skin with every immersion. She emerges pale and glistening, her eyes bright, her lips murmuring thanks to no god but herself. Her obsession poisons even daily life. Meals are interrupted by punishments, prayers by screams. She invents new cruelties, testing the endurance of her victims as if studying alchemy. Cold, heat, needles, blades. Every method is trial and error in her endless experiment against aging. You see her note the results with cold precision. This wound bleeds swiftly. This girl's skin softens more than that one's. She does not see horror. She sees science, progress, necessity. But the cost grows. Servants desert when they can, slipping away into the forests. Villages begin to resist, hiding daughters, sending only older women when summoned. Some families flee altogether, abandoning fields rather than risk their children. The countess responds with threats, fines, and more brutality. Fear spreads like plague, but it cannot mask the truth forever. Her vanity feeds upon itself. The more she indulges, the more she believes she has succeeded. She studies her reflection obsessively, insisting her cheeks are still smooth, her hair still dark. Yet, to others, her beauty has grown uncanny. They whisper she looks pale as death, her eyes too sharp, her presence chilling. To them, she seems less preserved than consumed. In court, her name becomes scandal. Nobles mutter that she is too harsh, too strange, too feared. Some believe the rumors of blood. Others dismiss them as peasant superstition. Yet all agree she is dangerous, whether for her cruelty, her power, or the secrets behind her locked doors. The legend of the Blood Countess begins here, in these years of unchecked power. She believes she has mastered time, that she has carved a path to eternal youth. But you, watching from the shadows of her mirror, see the truth. She has only bound herself more tightly to death, for the more blood she spills, the closer she draws the eyes of church and crown. And once those eyes turn fully upon her, no fortress of stone or veil of beauty will save her. For now, though, the screams echo through the corridors of Sachet, mingling with the rustle of gowns and the drip of candle wax. The countess smiles into a mirror, convinced of her triumph, and outside, in villages shrouded by mist, mothers clutch their daughters tighter, whispering prayers against the queen who bathes in blood to stay young. The rhythm of life within the castle begins to change. What was once a household filled with ordinary sounds, pots clanging in the kitchens, the whinny of horses in the stables, the laughter of scullery maids becomes distorted. You notice the silences first. Corridors that once echoed with chatter now fall quiet when the countess passes. Servants avoid eye contact, moving quickly, their faces pale. At night the stillness is pierced by muffled cries, sometimes cut short too quickly. It is here that her obsession becomes more obvious to everyone around her. The countess, now entering her middle years, examines her face daily with a scrutiny so intense it frightens her attendants. You watch her lean close to polished silver mirrors, tilting her head, pulling at her skin, searching for signs of age. "Do you see it?" she demands of a maid, pointing to the faintest crease at the corner of her mouth. The girl trembles, insisting there is nothing, that her mistress is flawless. But the reassurance never satisfies her. The fear of fading gnaws too deeply. The punishments grow worse. Once they were slaps, pinpricks, humiliations. Now they escalate into calculated cruelties. When a maid drops a comb, she is stripped and beaten with iron rods. When another stumbles carrying water, she is doused in freezing buckets and forced to stand shivering until her lips turn blue. When a servant girl dares to meet her mistress's eyes, Needles are pushed beneath her fingernails. Each act seems less about discipline and more about feeding an appetite. The Countess's growing conviction that pain and blood contain the key to preserving her own beauty. The servants whisper, but whispers cannot stop her. Her attendants, those trusted few who orbit her like dark planets, become accomplices. Dorothea Sentes and Ilona Hyo, older and hardened, carry out orders without hesitation. They drag girls by the hair into chambers, hold them down, fetch tools. Katerina, young and timid, tries to look away, but obeys nonetheless. Their hands are stained as surely as hers, their silence as damning as her cruelty. The rituals develop into routine. After punishments, the blood is collected in bowls or cloths. Sometimes she smears it across her face like ointment, rubbing until her skin glows red. Other times she dips her hands, watching the crimson drip from her fingers, and when she feels most desperate, she orders entire baths prepared, the steaming liquid filling tubs of stone. You see her lower herself into it, sighing as though soothed, her eyes closing in rapture. In her mind she is not monster but alchemist, drawing life from others into herself. Outside the walls, the peasants begin to notice. Daughters who leave for service do not return. Mothers whisper that their girls are being taken, that screams drift from the castle at night. Fathers grumble over ale that the Countess is cursed, a witch, a demon, but fear keeps them silent. To accuse her is to risk ruin. Her family name is powerful, her connections vast. A peasant's word means nothing against a noble woman's, so they pray instead, clutching rosaries, lighting candles, begging God to protect their children. You see the toll on the household itself. New servants are constantly recruited because old ones vanish. Some run away, fleeing into forests despite the danger of wolves and bandits, preferring the risks of the wild to the horrors of the castle. Others are silenced forever, their bodies disposed of in ways never spoken aloud. The few who remain grow pale, hollow-eyed, jump at every sound. Fear saturates the very stones. Yet, for all the terror, the Countess believes she is succeeding. Each morning she examines her skin, convinced the lines have softened, that her complexion glows. She forces her attendants to agree, demanding they swear her beauty has not diminished. When they hesitate, she grows furious, accusing them of lying, of envying her. Her vanity becomes paranoia, and her paranoia becomes justification for ever greater cruelty. In noble circles, her behavior sparks uneasy gossip. Guests invited to banquets remark on the strangeness of the castle, the absence of young maids, the hushed voices, the Countess's pallid but strangely smooth face. Ambassadors note her severity, her piercing gaze, the unease of those who serve her. Some dismiss the whispers as peasant superstition, but others carry them back to courts and councils, sowing seeds of suspicion. And still she continues. Her need is bottomless, her fear unending. Each bath, each smear of crimson, each scream silenced, is followed by another and another. She cannot stop, because to stop is to admit defeat, to watch her beauty fade like autumn leaves. She has convinced herself that the cost is necessary, that the sacrifice of others is the price of her survival. One evening, as winter winds howl against the shutters, you watch her seated before her mirror, her skin gleaming pale in the candlelight. She dips her fingers into a bowl still warm with blood, smearing it across her cheeks, her forehead, her lips. She studies her reflection with satisfaction, whispering, "They age, I do not." Her attendants bow behind her, silent, complicit, their faces blank masks. But you see what she cannot, the shadows deepening beneath her eyes, the hollowness growing in her cheeks. The blood does not preserve her. It consumes her, body and soul. She cannot perceive it, blinded by obsession. But outside the castle, in the villages and towns, the legend is already taking shape. The peasants do not call her Countess anymore. They call her Blood Queen. They whisper that she drinks life from maidens, that she has bargained with devils, that her castle is cursed. Priests mutter warnings in sermons. Travelers avoid the valley altogether. She is becoming less woman and more myth, even as she lives. And though she cannot see it, you can. The higher her walls rise, The louder her screams echo, the closer the world draws its gaze upon her. The church is listening, the crown is watching, and soon her blood-soaked secret will break free from stone walls and spread like wildfire. For now, though, she smiles at her reflection, convinced of her eternal youth. The basin at her side is dark, the air heavy, the candle trembling, and beneath it all, you hear the faintest prayer, perhaps from a servant hiding in shadows, perhaps from a mother in a distant village. Lord, deliver us from the queen who bathes in blood, to stay young. The first rumours of blood rituals slip into the countryside like smoke escaping a shuttered chimney. At first they are dismissed as peasant exaggerations, tales told by farm wives after too much wine, or warnings whispered to keep daughters obedient. Yet, even the most skeptical ears cannot ignore the sheer number of girls vanishing after entering Sector Castle. Too many maids fail to return home, too many servants are replaced, too often with new faces drawn from villages. Whispers grow heavier, until they begin to carry the weight of truth. You walk again through the cold corridors of the castle, where shadows gather more thickly than the torchlight can chase away. The Countess has grown more confident in her rituals. What once was cautious, blood smeared upon her hands, droplets collected from small wounds, has escalated into something both systematic and theatrical. The bathhouse is prepared at her command with precision. Her attendants heat cauldrons, fetch vessels, and ready towels as though preparing for a feast. But the feast is not food, it is flesh and blood. The first fully documented bath is whispered about by a servant who later fled. A girl accused of clumsiness is struck so violently that her blood sprays across the Countess's gown. Furious at the stain, she orders her attendants to restrain the girl. Then, with cold command, she demands the blood be gathered into a basin. Stripping herself of velvet, she lowers into it, sighing as the crimson rises around her. To her mind, this is not madness, but triumph, a secret discovered that no alchemist could match, a sacrament of her own invention. She believes the warmth soaking into her skin is youth itself, stolen and made hers. From that moment, the rituals become obsession. Whenever she glimpses the faintest crease at the corner of her mouth, whenever a mirror reflects a hint of shadow beneath her eyes, she demands another bath. Her attendants obey without protest, though their faces are pale. They have crossed the threshold with her. To turn back now would be to confess complicity. They fetch more girls, more basins, more cloths. The screams echo through the stone halls, muffled by thick doors but never fully silenced. Each ritual feeds the legend. Villagers claim that crimson water flows from the castle drains after storms. Travellers swear they hear shrieks carried on the night wind. Priests begin to mutter of witchcraft, of a woman who has bargained with devils. Mothers clutch their daughters tighter when riders approach, praying their homes will be spared the summons to serve at Sashjade. Fathers grumble in taverns that their daughters are safer in the woods among wolves than in the halls of a noble woman. Inside the castle, the rituals become almost liturgical in their repetition. The Countess insists on exact measures, how blood must be poured, how hot the water should be, how long she should soak. She treats her attendants like acolytes in a dark mass, their hands moving with practiced precision, their silence an unspoken oath. Afterward, she emerges refreshed, her skin glowing faintly in the candlelight, her lips murmuring, "You see? It worked." Her obsession with beauty bleeds into every aspect of her rule. When she meets guests, she demands constant compliments on her appearance. When she hears nobles gossiping about younger women, her fury simmers. She dismisses maids who are too pretty, accusing them of arrogance. She strikes those who smile too brightly. Every act of cruelty becomes justified by comparison. They must suffer so that she may remain radiant. You see how her world contracts. What once revolved around estates, justice, and banquets now revolves around mirrors, basins, and blood. Her letters grow fewer, her appearances rarer. She retreats deeper into her fortress, more isolated, more feared. The castle itself begins to change under her rule. Windows are shuttered, doors locked, chambers repurposed into hidden rooms. The architecture of secrecy grows brick by brick, nail by nail, until Sesha becomes less a noble home than a labyrinth of horror. And yet, to herself, she is not monstrous. She believes she is preserving not only her youth, but her family's honor. In her mind, her beauty reflects her power, and her power secures her dynasty. If she fades, she thinks, so too will the legacy of the Bathory name. Her rituals are in her twisted logic, a duty as much as a desire. Her attendants Dorka, Ilona, and Katarina become notorious among the servants. Their footsteps strike terror, their voices herald suffering. Dorka, in particular, relishes cruelty, inventing torments even without orders. Ilona grows skilled at concealment, disposing of bodies, scrubbing stones until no trace remains. Katarina, youngest, trembles but complies, her conscience eroding day by day. They are bound to the Countess by chains stronger than iron, fear, guilt, and the promise of shared damnation. The number of victims grows. At first dozens, then hundreds. Some vanish from villages, others are lured with promises of noble service. The more the Countess indulges, the more careless she becomes. Sometimes girls arrive in groups, only for all of them to disappear. Mothers wail, fathers rage, but who dares accuse a woman of such rank? The Bathory name shields her, and fear silences the rest. But fear cannot silence forever. Rumors spread across borders, carried by merchants and pilgrims. Tales of the Blood Countess reach Vienna, reach Rome, reach ears too powerful to ignore. What began as whispers in villages has become scandal in courts, and scandal, when it threatens the authority of church and crown, demands investigation. Still, the Countess does not stop. In her chamber, before her mirror, she gazes at her reflection and smiles. She believes she is winning her war against time. She believes she is triumphant. But you, watching from the corner where torchlight fades into shadow, see what she cannot. The wrinkles may be invisible to her eyes, but the horror in the eyes of others tells the truth. Her beauty is no longer radiant but uncanny. Her pallor no longer youthful but corpse-like. She has not escaped decay. She has merely disguised it with terror. And outside, beyond the castle walls, the rumors grow louder. Priests speak more boldly. Peasants mutter more fiercely. Nobles raise their brows with sharper suspicion. The stage is being set, though she cannot see it yet. For every scream silenced within her fortress, 1,000 whispers rise beyond it. She believes she has conquered time, but time, patient and merciless, is already closing in. By the early years of the 17th century, the Countess's household has become something more frightening than even her closest allies had once imagined. What began as punishments, cloaked under the pretense of discipline, has blossomed into a system of cruelty that spreads like rot through every stone corridor of Sejdi Castle. You walk those halls now, and each step feels heavy with secrets, as though the walls themselves are saturated with the weight of what they have witnessed. The victims are no longer only servants clumsy at their work. The pool of the vulnerable widens. Poor girls from the surrounding villages are lured into the fortress with promises of employment, wages, or education. Mothers, desperate to provide their daughters with a future, see the noblewoman's summons as an opportunity for advancement. They dress their girls in patched gowns, kiss their foreheads, and send them up the winding path to the castle gates. The girls step inside, smiling, hopeful, and are never seen again. Inside, the rituals expand in both number and severity. The Countess, restless and insatiable, grows inventive with cruelty. No longer content with simple beatings, she devises new torments, testing the endurance of flesh. Victims are stripped and exposed to freezing air until their skin turns blue. They are branded with hot irons, pricked with needles, and beaten with rods. When the Countess tires of cruelty for cruelty's sake, she insists their blood be collected, sponged into cloths, drained into basins, or smeared across her face like balm. The Countess convinces herself that she is engaged in a form of science, perhaps even theology. She mutters to her attendants that blood is life, that to absorb it is to absorb vitality itself. She compares her rituals to the sacraments, her baths to holy anointings. In her mind she is no monster but a visionary, uncovering secrets denied to lesser mortals. The arrogance of her rank blinds her to the abyss she has created. And yet, cracks form in her armor. Each ritual must be hidden, each disappearance explained. The sheer number of vanished girls grows impossible to ignore. Villages whisper of dozens, then scores, then hundreds. Parents who once sent daughters willingly now bolt their doors when her stewards ride through. Priests speak more boldly in sermons, warning of a noble woman cursed by God. When bells toll in the valleys below, they toll less for mass than for the souls of those lost. For the Countess, none of this matters. She gazes into mirrors, stroking her pale cheeks. Convinced her youth endures, she forces her attendants to confirm it daily. Tell me I look no older. They answer with trembling voices that she is as radiant as ever. Their fear is as potent as loyalty. To contradict her would be to join the victims. Her cruelty grows careless. No longer confined to hidden chambers, punishments spill into courtyards, where servants hear screams and peasants glimpse shadows at windows. Stories spread faster now, fueled by those who escape. A handful of girls stagger back to villages with scars. Their stories incoherent but chilling. They speak of baths filled with blood, of torture disguised as beauty. Their words are dismissed by some, but believed by enough to ignite fury. Nobles, too, begin to take notice. The Bathory name once shielded her, but even the strongest dynasty cannot smother scandal forever. Fellow lords whisper at banquets that she has grown strange, her castle too quiet, her household too unstable. Some believe the rumors, others merely exploit them, but all agree she is dangerous. Her eccentricity, once dismissed as severity, is now viewed as madness. The church listens as well. Priests compile confessions, notes, rumors, stitching them together into a case that can no longer be ignored. Bishops warn of scandal that could stain the nobility and embolden heresy. Rome hears whispers too, carried by ambassadors uneasy about the balance of power. What began as local muttering now reaches ears of kings and cardinals. But the Countess does not see it. She is too consumed by mirrors, too entranced by her own reflection. Each bath, each smear of crimson, convinces her she is victorious over time. She feels invincible, untouchable, eternal. She does not realize that the very excess of her rituals has doomed her. You see it though. You see the way her attendants grow nervous when outsiders visit, how they glance at doors too often, how their hands shake as they clean. You see the way peasants cross themselves when her carriage passes, not in reverence but in fear. You see how her name spreads in taverns, less noble title than curse, the Blood Queen. She believes she is writing her own legend of beauty preserved forever. In truth, she is writing the legend of horror that will damn her name for centuries. Her baths of blood, whether they truly preserved her or not, have already immortalized her, not as she intended, but as the world will remember. And still, each night she retreats to her chamber, her attendants lighting candles, her basins prepared. She strips of velvet and pearls, lowers herself into crimson water, closes her eyes, and sighs with satisfaction. She whispers to her reflection afterward, "I will not fade, I will not." But beyond the castle walls, the world whispers something else, louder each day. She must be stopped. The stage is set for confrontation, though she remains blind to it. The church gathers evidence. The crown sharpens its interest. The villagers grow restless. The fortress that once protected her has become a cage of her own making, and the blood she has spilled now cries out for justice. For now, though, the rituals continue. The basins fill, the screams echo, the mirrors gleam, and you, standing in the flicker of torchlight, know what she cannot. Her beauty may have defied time in her eyes, but time itself is already marching toward her gates. By now the castle is less a residence than a fortress of whispers. From the moment you step through its gates, you sense dread clinging to the stones like damp moss. The great hall, once alive with music and feasts, sits colder and quieter. The peasants in surrounding villages speak openly now, though always with voices lowered. Mothers tell their daughters to avoid the road that winds toward the castle, to hide when riders approach. Fathers mutter bitterly that the noble woman has cursed the land, that wolves are safer companions than her guards. Priests give sermons about judgment, their words veiled but unmistakable. No one says her name without crossing themselves, as if it might summon her gaze. Inside the walls, her obsession rules everything. The Countess wakes and immediately studies her reflection, searching for cracks in the illusion she has created. She orders her attendants to fetch girls with smooth skin, claiming they are needed for chores. You know what awaits them. Sometimes they vanish within hours. Sometimes they last weeks. None return whole. The fortress itself seems to adapt to her rituals. Hidden chambers are created, their doors concealed behind tapestries, or disguised as pantries. Windows are shuttered to keep prying eyes from glimpsing the truth. Stains seep into flagstones no matter how furiously servants scrub. The air is heavy, thick with the mingled scents of iron and candle wax. Even the crows circling the towers seem louder, as though mocking the secrets within. Her attendants remain her dark chorus. Dorca's cruelty grows creative, inventing torments almost gleefully. Ilona organizes each act with the precision of a steward tallying accounts, ensuring nothing is wasted. Katerina trembles more openly now, sometimes weeping after rituals, but her fear keeps her bound. Together they enforce silence, ensuring the castle functions as a machine of terror. The peasants' rumours take form in more frightening stories. Some claim that red water runs from the drains after storms. Others swear that strange fires burn at night, flickering from high windows. Travellers avoid the region entirely, unwilling to risk a night near such a place. And still, despite the fear, some villagers send daughters when summoned. Poverty leaves no choice. To refuse a noblewoman is to invite ruin. To comply is to risk losing the child forever. The Countess grows careless. Where once she confined her rituals to secluded chambers, now punishments spill into courtyards where screams carry into the night. Servants glimpse too much. Guards overhear. Even her own relatives, visiting for feasts or councils, remark uneasily on the absence of young maids in the pallid, drawn faces of those who remain. Whispers climb the social ladder, moving from peasants to nobles, from nobles to priests, from priest to bishops. And yet, she remains convinced of her triumph. She gazes into mirrors, convinced her skin still glows, that time has yielded to her will. She demands her attendants confirm it daily, their trembling voices repeating, "You look as radiant as ever." To her, their fear is proof, not warning. Each ritual, each bath, convinces her she has beaten the one enemy no sword can slay. But you see what she cannot. Her beauty has grown uncanny, her pallor corpse-like. Nobles mutter that she looks less youthful than ghostly, her presence unsettling rather than alluring. The very thing she sought, to preserve her allure, has twisted into its opposite. She has become legend before death, not for beauty but for horror. The castle itself becomes a symbol of that horror. Villagers point to it on distant hills, calling it cursed. Children scare one another with stories of its mistress, claiming she flies at night, drinking the blood of maidens. Priests warn of damnation, likening her to Jezebel or Herodias. Already her name is less woman than myth. And still, within the fortress the rituals continue. The attendants bring another girl, another basin, another night of screams. The Countess reclines in crimson, whispering to her reflection, "I will not fade." She believes herself untouchable, protected by family name, by wealth, by fear. She does not realize that her fortress, designed to keep secrets in, has also trapped her, for the world beyond the walls is stirring. The peasants whisper more boldly, the priests gather more testimonies, the nobles tire of scandal. The crown itself begins to listen, wary of the damage such rumors may cause, and the church, patient but merciless, prepares to act. But inside the castle, she does not hear it. The screams drown out all else. The mirrors reflect only what she wishes to see. The fortress she has made into prison convinces her she is safe. You know better. You can feel the net tightening, the gaze of church and crown turning steadily toward her gates. Soon soldiers will march these halls, priests will dig through chambers, courtiers will whisper accusations openly, instead of behind closed doors. The fortress that shielded her will become her cage. For now, though, she reigns in terror, convinced of eternal youth. She studies her reflection, satisfied, while outside villagers cross themselves and whisper prayers. Deliver us from the queen who bathes in blood to stay young. The fortress that once protected her begins to feel like a stage, every wall and shadow complicit in the performance of cruelty. By this point, the rituals are no longer hidden experiments. They are an institution, and no institution of terror runs without accomplices. You walk with her closest attendants now, the women whose loyalty or fear binds them to her, and you see how they weave themselves into her legacy of horror. Dorka, sharp-tongued and merciless, acts as executioner more often than maid. Her hands are rough, her grip unshakable as she drags victims to chambers, ignoring screams. It is she who invents new torments when the Countess's imagination stalls. She whispers suggestions into a mistress's ear. Let us burn their flesh to see how long they endure. Or, this one should be frozen. The shock will produce more blood. To Dorka, cruelty has become routine, a profession almost. In the eyes of the servants, she is as feared as the Countess herself. Alona Gio, older and more calculating, becomes administrator of the horror. She manages supplies, ensures punishments are carried out discreetly, and keeps track of which villages have already been tapped for victims. She is pragmatic, the kind of woman who in another life might have run a household with precision. But here, she uses her skill to conceal blood. She orders stone floors scrubbed, linens burned, drains cleared. Her efficiency ensures the rituals can continue without interruption. There are others, 2 guards who turn their heads, stewards who ask no questions, priests bribed with coin or favors. Each, by silence, adds a brick to the wall that shields the Countess. It is easy to imagine her alone in her cruelty, but the truth is worse. She is surrounded by a circle that makes her cruelty possible. Without them, she could not sustain her reign of terror. With them, she becomes unstoppable, at least for a time. The complicity spreads outward. Villagers, terrified of her wrath, sometimes surrender daughters willingly, believing refusal more dangerous than sacrifice. Some hope their compliance will shield their families from worse punishments. Others rationalize. Perhaps the girls will serve in kitchens. Perhaps the rumors are exaggerations. Fear breeds silence, and silence breeds complicity. Inside the fortress, the rituals grow ever more grotesque. Witnesses later speak of girls suspended by ropes, their blood drained into tubs. Others recall iron instruments designed for torment, whips embedded with nails, cages so small the body could not straighten. You notice, though, how paranoia begins to infect even her circle. Dorka snaps more easily, striking not only victims, but servants who falter. Ilona grows secretive, guarding supplies and hiding records. Katarina's tears grow more frequent, her hands shaking as she lights candles. Each knows that discovery means death, not only for their mistress but for them. They are bound by shared guilt, and shared guilt is chain heavier than iron. The Countess, however, sees none of this. She remains enthralled by her reflection, by the belief that her skin remains smooth, her beauty untouched. Each bath convinces her she has cheated time. Each smear of blood across her face feels like victory. She demands daily confirmation from her attendants. I look no older, do I? And they answer, no, mistress. You look as radiant as ever. Their trembling voices are not proof, but she accepts them as gospel. Yet, outside the fortress, the world is less silent. The sheer number of disappearances cannot be ignored. Priests record testimonies from villagers who lost daughters. Merchants whisper to nobles of the horrors rumoured in Chargé. Ambassadors report to distant courts that scandal brews in Hungary. Even her powerful name cannot drown out the chorus of accusation. Still, she persists. She believes her power shields her, that her attendants protect her, that her family's influence is armor stronger than steel. She does not see that every attendant is a witness, every servant a potential betrayer, every whisper a thread that, woven together, will form the rope of her downfall. You walk her halls at night, when torches sputter and shadows stretch long. You hear the footsteps of her attendants echoing, their murmured voices, the muffled cries behind doors. You smell the iron tang that no herbs or incense can mask. And you feel it. The inevitability. No fortress of complicity can stand forever. For complicity is fragile. Fear can silence for years, but guilt festers, rumors spread. Courage grows. One servant too frightened to remain will run. One priest too horrified to stay quiet will write. One noble too eager to wound her family's pride will speak aloud what others whisper. The Countess does not see it yet. She reclines in crimson baths, convinced of her triumph, her attendants bowed in silent agreement. But you, standing unseen in the corner of her mirror, know better. You know the truth. Her circle, the very shield that enables her, will one day become the net that ensnares her. And outside, in villages and courts alike, the question already forms, not whispered now, but spoken. How long can this go on? The countryside grows restless, its whispers swelling into an audible murmur. By now the peasants know too much. Too many daughters have vanished within the grey walls of Sejdeh. Too many nights have carried the sound of screams on the wind, only to be explained away with lies about wolves or bandits. And too many mothers have pressed crucifixes to their lips, praying against the noble woman they dare not name aloud. Rumour transforms into story, and story hardens into conviction. Farmers huddled around hearths speak of the Countess as if she is no longer flesh and blood, but a spectre. They call her Blood Queen, in hushed voices, a noble woman who feeds upon maidens to preserve her beauty. Children are warned not to stray after dark, lest her riders seize them. Even priests, once cautious, begin to preach with fire. God's judgment cannot be delayed forever. At first the authorities ignore these murmurs. What are peasant complaints compared to the power of a Bathory? Her name is still heavy with influence. Her estates vast, her relatives seated in high places. Nobles sneer at tales of bloodbaths, dismissing them as superstitious nonsense. The church, wary of scandal, hesitates to move too quickly against such a prominent woman. And yet, the rumours persist, seeping upward through the cracks of silence. It begins with a trickle of testimony. A servant flees the castle and seeks sanctuary with a priest, confessing horrors too dark to invent. Another stumbles into a village half dead, bearing scars that tell their own story. A mother, frantic with grief, marches to a monastery to beg justice for her missing child. Each account alone is fragile, easily dismissed. Together they form a chorus that can no longer be ignored. Priests begin compiling reports, recording the words of survivors. They describe baths of blood, tortures unimaginable, chambers soaked with crimson. Some exaggerate, some contradict, but the pattern is unmistakable. Girls are disappearing, and all roads lead to Sejdeh. These reports make their way to bishops, who read them with tightening jaws. The scandal is too vast to suppress. If left unchecked, it could stain not only the Bathory name, but the church itself, for ignoring it. Nobles, too, begin to grumble. The Countess's behaviour has become impossible to conceal at feasts and councils. Too many guests remark upon the strange emptiness of her household, the uncanny pallor of her face, the unsettling silence of her halls. Some dismiss it as eccentricity, others whisper of madness. But a few see opportunity. Her fall could mean redistribution of her estates, her disgrace a chance to weaken her family's grip on power. Ambition and suspicion intertwine, sharpening into motive. The decisive moment comes when the rumours spread beyond Hungary itself. Merchants carry tales into Vienna, where the Habsburg court listens with alarm. Ambassadors report to Rome that scandal brews in the east, a scandal so grotesque it risks undermining noble authority altogether. A noble woman accused of murdering hundreds of girls. It cannot be ignored. The crown and the church realize they must act, not only for justice but to preserve their own legitimacy. Still, caution rules the first steps. No monarch wishes to provoke the powerful Bathory family without certainty. No bishop wishes to accuse without evidence. So investigations begin quietly, under cover of secrecy. Clerics and officials travel to villages, gathering testimony, writing reports. They question servants who fled, parents who wept, priests who heard confessions. Each piece of evidence is weighed, each rumour cross-checked. What they find chills them. The testimonies converge upon the same themes: torture, blood, disappearances, the complicity of attendants. The details vary. Some claim she drank blood, others that she bathed in it, others still that she smeared it on her face. But the essence is the same. Girls went into Chete and never came out. Too many to be ignored, too many to be explained away. By now the Countess notices the unease. She hears whispers even within her walls, sees the nervous glances of her attendants. Her paranoia sharpens. She tightens control, forbids servants from leaving, punishes anyone suspected of gossip. She becomes harsher, more frantic, convinced that enemies conspire to ruin her. Yet still, she continues her rituals, as though each new bath might stave off not only age but also discovery. Outside, however, the storm gathers. Reports reach the highest authorities. Bishops murmur of excommunication. Nobles plot how to seize her estates. The crown authorizes discreet surveillance. Her fortress, once impregnable, is already breached, not by soldiers, but by rumor and testimony. The noose tightens slowly, invisibly, and yet she remains blind. When she gazes into her mirror, she sees only smooth skin and pale cheeks. She asks her attendants, "Do I not look young still?" And they answer, trembling, "Yes, mistress." She believes them. She convinces herself she is untouchable. She does not realize that the church and crown have already begun to sharpen their knives. The villagers, meanwhile, sense change. They hear of clerics visiting secretly, of officials questioning in hushed tones. Hope flickers where despair once reigned. Mothers pray more fervently, believing God has heard their cries. Fathers speak more boldly in taverns, no longer whispering but demanding justice. The legend of the Blood Queen spreads farther, but now it is accompanied by another phrase: she will be stopped. In winter, soldiers march towards Sianaita. Their armor clinks in the frosted air. Their torches flare against the snow. Priests ride with them, clutching parchment sealed with authority. The peasants watch from doorways, crossing themselves, whispering prayers. The fortress that once seemed unassailable will finally face the eyes of justice. The Countess does not know yet. She reclines in crimson water, sighing with satisfaction, convinced she has cheated time once more. But you, standing in the doorway of her mirror, know better. The storm is no longer rumor. It is here, marching steadily toward her gates. And when soldiers cross her threshold, the secret she has guarded so fiercely will bleed into the open. The church, when it finally moves, does so with the patience of a predator stalking prey. For months, perhaps years, bishops have collected testimony, priests have written reports, and courtiers have whispered warnings into the ears of monarchs. By now, the weight of evidence is undeniable. Too many servants have fled with scars, too many mothers have wept before altars, too many priests have repeated confessions that chill even hardened men. The investigation becomes not a question of whether to act, but of how to act without tearing apart the fragile balance of power in Hungary. You walk in the company of clerics as they ride through the valleys toward the villages that feed into Sejal, their robes flapping the cold wind, their faces grim. They knock on cottage doors, their pens ready, their parchment rolled, and the people, terrified, but also desperate, finally speak freely. A shepherd tells of seeing smoke rising strangely from the castle chimneys at night, and of hearing screams carried on the wind. A washerwoman weeps as she recounts how her daughter was taken for service and never returned. A former servant, trembling, whispers of chambers slick with blood, of basins filled with crimson water, of a mistress who smeared her face with the lifeblood of girls. Each story feeds the others, layering rumor with detail, detail with confirmation. The clerics write it all down, their pens scratching furiously, their hands shaking. Some stories contradict each other. One witness swears the Countess drank blood, another insists she bathed in it, another says she merely smeared it across her cheeks. But the contradictions matter little. The common thread is clear. Young girls disappear into the castle, and screams echo within its walls. The scale of it defies imagination. Some villagers whisper of dozens, others of hundreds, still others of a number so large that even saying it aloud feels blasphemous. The clerics do not come alone. Soldiers ride beside them, their armor clinking, their eyes wary, for though they are sent to investigate, they know they may be called upon to act swiftly. A noble woman of such rank cannot be approached lightly, but she also cannot be allowed to slip away. Every step closer to Sejda feels like the tightening of a noose. Inside the castle, the Countess begins to sense the shift. She notices her attendants exchanging nervous glances, her servants more fearful than usual. She hears whispers that priests are in the villages, that soldiers are questioning peasants. Her paranoia sharpens to a knife edge. She grows harsher, lashing out more quickly, punishing with even greater fury. She believes that fear will protect her, that doubling down will silence suspicion. In truth, it only fuels the storm. The Church frames its investigation not merely as justice, but as divine duty. Priests thunder from pulpits that the land has been cursed by sin, that innocence cries out for vengeance. They compare her to Jezebel, to Herodias, to the harlots of Babylon. The Countess's family, powerful though they are, cannot smother the scandal. They attempt to discredit witnesses, to bribe clerics, to insist the rumours are peasant superstition, but the sheer weight of testimony overwhelms them. Even nobles, once silent, now whisper that the fortress reeks of death, that her beauty is uncanny, that her cruelty has become too dangerous to ignore. Her allies dwindle, her enemies multiply. You walk with investigators as they pore over lists of missing girls, as they count names that stretch beyond reckoning. They visit convents where nuns tell of girls who arrived scarred, broken, whispering of horrors before taking vows. They visit taverns where travellers recount tales of red-stained snow outside the castle walls. Each story, each detail is inked onto parchment, sealed with wax, and sent to higher authorities. The case grows heavier with each page. At last the crown itself intervenes. The king authorises a formal inquiry, appointing officials to lead it. Letters are dispatched, soldiers mobilized, priests empowered with extraordinary authority. The message is clear. The scandal threatens not only souls but also the stability of the realm. Action must be taken before the legend of the Blood Queen grows so large it consumes the monarchy itself. Still, caution tempers every step. To accuse a Bathory outright is to risk political turmoil, so the approach is careful, calculated. The soldiers who march towards Solikos are instructed not to storm recklessly, but to gather evidence, to prepare the ground for trial. Yet you can feel their unease. They know the horror they may uncover. Inside her chamber, the Countess continues her rituals, still blind to the inevitability. She gazes into mirrors, convinced her skin is smooth, her beauty intact. She mutters to herself, "They will not take this from me." Her attendants, pale and silent, obey her commands with trembling hands. But even they know. The walls are closing in. The Church has set its gaze upon her. The crown has sharpened its will. The villagers have found their voices. All that remains is for soldiers to cross her threshold, for priests to break her walls, for her secrets to spill into the light. And when they do, the horror that has thrived in whispers will become evidence carved into stone and parchment. Undeniable, irreversible. For now, though, the investigation grows louder. The testimonies pile higher. The soldiers march closer. The fortress of Sejda, once her sanctuary, is about to become her prison. The winter night is cold when the soldiers finally approach Sejda. Their boots crunch over frost-hardened earth, their torches painting gold against the snow-white fields. Villagers watch from behind shutters, holding their breath as steel glints beneath cloaks. The men ride under royal command, accompanied by priests who murmur prayers and officials carrying scrolls heavy with seals. It is not an army, but it is enough. And more importantly, it carries the weight of crown and church, the two forces no fortress can resist forever. Inside the castle, the Countess prepares as though nothing unusual is coming. She has ordered her attendants to ready another bath. The basins warmed, the cloths folded neatly, the victim already chosen. She still believes herself untouchable, even as whispers of investigation reach her ears. She tells herself her family's name is shield enough, her wealth armor against any accusation. She cannot imagine that soldiers will dare to cross her threshold. She cannot imagine that the screams she has silenced for years will one day echo louder than her rank. The gates creak open at dawn. The captain of the troop announces his arrival not as request but as command. Priests step forward, their crucifixes gleaming, their eyes hard. The countess, wrapped in heavy furs, descends to meet them, her chin lifted, her voice sharp with indignation. "You enter without summons," she says. "Do you forget whose house this is?" But her words clang hollow against the cold silence of steel and scripture. The soldiers sweep through the halls. They do not find hidden treasure, nor secret alchemy, nor dark spell books. What they find is worse. Blood still fresh on the stones, torn garments tossed carelessly into corners, bodies broken and discarded in chambers reeking of iron. Some victims are still alive, barely girls too weak to flee, their eyes wide with terror as the soldiers lift them into the light. Their testimonies need no words. Their scars speak with undeniable eloquence. The discovery spreads like fire. Servants seize the moment to confess, pouring out stories they had buried in fear. They describe the punishments, the tortures, the baths. They name not only the countess, but her attendants, Dorka, Ilona, Katerina, as executioners and accomplices. Each testimony is recorded, each detail added to the growing ledger of horror. The evidence is overwhelming, more damning than even the wildest rumor. The countess rages. She storms through corridors, demanding loyalty, cursing betrayal, insisting she is victim of conspiracy. She accuses the peasants of lies, the servants of treachery, the church of envy, but her voice, once commanding, now sounds shrill. The arrest is swift but strangely restrained. She is not dragged in chains through the mud, nor struck down like a criminal. She is placed under house arrest within her own fortress, confined to chambers that once echoed with her commands. Guards are posted at every door, priests patrol the halls, soldiers occupy the courtyards. The fortress has turned inward, transforming from weapon into cage. Her attendants fare worse. Dorka and Ilona are seized, bound and interrogated. Under pressure and perhaps under torture, they confess in detail, recounting methods, numbers, rituals. They implicate themselves freely, but always return to her as instigator. Katerina, terrified and sobbing, confirms much the same. Their words inked onto parchments seal the case. The Queen of Cruelty is no longer a whispered figure of legend, but a criminal subject to judgment. The peasants, when news spreads, react with a mixture of horror and relief. Mothers weep, fathers cross themselves, children whisper in awe. Some demand vengeance, others pray for her soul. All agree that justice, long delayed, has finally breached the castle walls. The name Blood Queen is no longer legend. It is accusation, shouted openly in taverns and churches alike. The church wastes no time framing the discovery in moral terms. Priests thunder from pulpits that God has revealed the sins of the wicked. They describe her crimes as warning against vanity, against cruelty, against women who defy their station. Her story becomes sermon as much as scandal, proof that sin, no matter how high its rank, will be dragged into light. The crown, for its part, treads more carefully. The king recognizes both the danger and the opportunity. To punish her too harshly risks angering her powerful family. To punish her too lightly risks scandal that undermines royal authority. So she is treated not as common criminal, but as noble accused. She is confined, investigated, prepared for trial. Her attendants, less protected by blood or rank, will bear the brunt of immediate punishment. Inside her chambers, the countess refuses to yield. She paces before her mirror, still studying her face, still insisting her beauty has not faded. She writes letters to relatives, pleading for intervention. She curses the servants who betrayed her, the peasants who lied, the soldiers who dared. She refuses confession, refuses repentance. "They fear me," she mutters. "That is all this is. They fear me, because I would not bow. But you," watching from the corner where torchlight flickers against her pale face, "know the truth. Fear no longer protects her. It has turned against her. The very terror she cultivated now damns her. Each scream she silenced has returned as testimony. Each victim she discarded now stands as ghost in the court of public judgment. The fortress that once kept secrets has become her prison. The guards who once obeyed now watch her every move. The attendants who once shielded her now accuse her. The church that once praised her piety now condemns her vanity, and the crown that once benefited from her wealth now prepares to strip her of everything. The arrest at Saste is more than an end to cruelty. It is the beginning of legend. For from this point on, the Countess is no longer merely a noblewoman, nor even merely a criminal. She is myth incarnate, her story spreading across Europe in waves of horror and fascination. She may not yet realize it, but in this moment, as guards lock her chamber door and priests whisper prayers outside, her fate is sealed. She will never again walk freely through her halls. She will never again recline in crimson baths. She will never again gaze into her mirror with satisfaction. The queen who bathed in blood to stay young has been caught in her own reflection, and the world now stares back. The trial begins not in some cramped village hall, but in chambers heavy with ceremony, where banners hang and torches crackle, and the air is thick with the smell of wax and damp stone. Officials of the crown sit alongside bishops of the church, quills poised, scrolls unfurled. The case against the Countess is not a simple matter of justice. It is a performance, a spectacle meant to assure nobles and peasants alike that authority can and will punish even the highest when sin runs too deep. You stand among the crowd of listeners as the proceedings open. The herald proclaims the charges in a voice that booms against the stone: murder, torture, witchcraft, and the corruption of countless souls. Each word lands with weight, echoing through the chamber, and you feel the shiver ripple through those gathered. These are not mere accusations. They are wounds in the fabric of society, wounds that must be sewn shut in public view. The attendants, Dorka, Ilona, and Katerina, are dragged forth first. Shackled and trembling, they stand before judges who glare down with righteous fury. Interrogators press them for details, and under pressure, some from threats, some from torture, they spill words like blood from a vein. Dorka confesses with a sneer, unrepentant, even proud of her cruelty. She describes punishments devised, bodies broken, basins filled. Her eyes gleam with a twisted pride, as though recounting great works of art. Ilona, practical even in disgrace, speaks with flat voice, her confessions meticulous. She lists names of villages, numbers of girls, methods of concealment. Her precision chills more than Dorka's fury, for she reveals not madness, but management. To her, cruelty was administration, horror logged like account books. Katerina weeps openly, her words tumbling through sobs. She admits her part reluctantly, blaming fear, blaming threats, blaming her youth. She cries that she never wanted it, that she trembled every time, that she only obeyed because refusal meant death. The judges listen with cold faces, their pens scratching down each word. Her tears may win her a lesser punishment, but they cannot cleanse her complicity. The court listens as witnesses are brought forth. Survivors, pale and scarred, step into the chamber, their voices thin but steady as they recount what they endured. One shows scars across her arms, another describes being forced to bleed into basins, another collapses into tears as she recalls screams in the night. Their words carry the power of truth, undeniable and searing. The crowd gasps, the judges nod grimly, the bishops mutter prayers, peasants from the villages testify too. Mothers speak of daughters taken for service, never returned. Fathers describe how they were ordered to send their girls or risk ruin. Priests read from confessions gathered in hushed tones, words so grim they seem carved in fire. Each testimony weaves into the tapestry of accusation, a tapestry so dense no denial can unravel it. And yet, the Countess herself is not dragged to the stand. Shielded by her rank, she is spared the humiliation of public interrogation. She remains confined to her chambers, her fate discussed in absence. Her attendants bear the brunt, their words shaping the narrative, their confessions sealing the story. Some whisper this is deliberate, that the crown wishes to punish without risking scandal of a noblewoman screaming in open court. Others mutter it. It is cowardice, sparing her the shame peasants endure. Whatever the reason, her silence becomes its own confession, her absence an admission of guilt. As for the Countess, the judgment is more complicated. The Crown and Church agree she is guilty, but her noble blood shields her from the pyre. To burn a battery would be to ignite rebellion among powerful kin. To release her would be to spit in the face of justice, so they choose a middle path. Confinement. She is condemned to spend her remaining years walled within her own fortress, sealed in chambers that once echoed with her cruelty. No visitors save guards, no voice save her own. Still, the effect is the same. The queen who bathed in blood to stay young has been stripped of power, stripped of attendance, stripped of freedom. Her chambers are her cell, her mirrors her only companions, her beauty her torment. She, who once commanded screams and silence alike, now sits in silence herself, haunted by ghosts of her own making. Outside, the legend spreads like wildfire. Ballads are sung of the Blood Countess, some painting her as demon, others as tragic figure consumed by vanity. Pamphlets circulate, their woodcuts crude but effective, depicting her bathing in crimson, her face radiant and terrifying. Children whisper her name in fear, priests thunder it as warning, nobles mutter it in scandal. She has become more than woman, she has become myth, and you, watching the trial unfold, know the truth. Justice has been done, but not fully. Her attendants burned, her victims buried, her crimes sealed in parchment. Yet the legend cannot be confined. It will grow, reshape, endure. The trial ends. The chamber empties. The torches dim, but her story is only beginning. For she is no longer merely Elizabeth Bathory, Countess of Hungary. She is eternal now, carved into memory as the queen who bathed in blood to stay young. The sentence of confinement is read aloud with solemn weight, and the echo of it lingers far longer than the judges' voices. No execution for her, no stake, no pyre, only walls, stone and silent. The attendants who carried out her orders have already felt the flames. Their ashes drift on winter winds as grim testimony. But the Countess herself is to remain alive, entombed in her own fortress. For some this punishment feels merciful, for others infuriating. For her, it is unbearable. You walk with her as guards escort her back to Sadia under armed watch. The same gates that once swung wide in her honour now close like prison doors. The same halls where servants once scattered at her passing now echo with footsteps of soldiers. The fortress that was stage for her cruelty becomes her cell, and she, who once wielded its stones as weapon of fear, now feels them as chains. Her confinement is not ordinary. The Crown decrees she may not leave her chambers. Windows are sealed with iron bars, doors bricked, except for a narrow opening through which food is passed. Guards keep constant vigil. She is not to hear voices, nor command servants, nor preside over feasts. Her world shrinks to a single room of stone, cold and bare, lit only by flickering torchlight. At first she rages. She storms about her chamber, cursing the Crown, the Church, the peasants, her attendants. She insists the accusations are lies, conspiracies woven by envious rivals. She strikes the walls with fists, demands her family intervene, shouts until her voice breaks. But the walls do not answer. The guards do not flinch. The silence swallows her fury whole. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months. Her rage dulls into sullen silence, then into restless pacing. She circles her chamber endlessly, tracing the same steps until grooves wear into the stone. She stares into a cracked mirror salvaged from her belongings, searching still for signs of youth. Each day she whispers, "I have not faded, I have not." But the mirror reflects what she cannot deny. Is deepening, hair greying, cheeks hollowing. Time, which she fought with such cruelty, claims her inch by inch. The irony gnaws at her. Surrounded by silence, denied her rituals, she must watch herself wither in the very solitude she once thought would preserve her. Her hands, once delicate and adorned with jewels, grow thin and spotted. Her lips, once smeared crimson with blood, lose their fullness. The woman who believed herself eternal becomes ordinary, her beauty devoured not by enemies but by time itself. Outside her walls, the world does not forget. If anything, her confinement amplifies her legend. Minstrels sing ballads of the Blood Queen who is sealed alive in her own fortress. Priests use her tale as warning against vanity and sin. Pamphlets spread lurid depictions of her crimes, some exaggerated, some invented entirely. In taverns and marketplaces, her name is spoken with a mixture of fear and fascination. She has become cautionary tale, horror story, fireside legend. Her family visits rarely, embarrassed and cautious. When they do, they speak through the narrow opening in her wall. Their voice is cold. They promise to maintain her estates, to protect the family name, but they do not speak of freedom. They have decided she must remain forgotten, sacrificed for the preservation of their dynasty. To them, she is no longer kin, but liability. Her attendants' fates haunt her. Dorka and Ilona burned, their shrieks echoing into history. Katerina rots in prison, her youth wasted in stone cells. The Countess thinks of them often, sometimes with bitterness. They betrayed me, with their tongues, and sometimes with longing, remembering when their loyalty made her feel invincible. In the silence of her chamber, their ghosts whisper louder than the wind. And what of the victims? Their names are scattered like ash, most forgotten, some remembered only in church records, others lingering only in the grief of families. Yet, their absence is felt everywhere. Villages never recovered from the loss of daughters. Mothers never ceased to weep. Priests never forgot the confessions they recorded. They are the true measure of her legacy. Not the baths of blood, not the cracked mirrors, but the countless lives erased. As years grind on, the Countess declines further. Her once commanding voice grows weak, her body frail. She spends long hours seated at the narrow slit of her window, staring at the horizon she will never reach. Sometimes she murmurs to herself, sometimes to God, sometimes to shadows only she can see. Guards whisper that she speaks to her mirror at night, caressing it like a lover, whispering, "I will not fade, I will not." But fade she does. Age claims her as it claims all. Her skin sags, her hair whitens, her eyes grow dull. The woman who sought eternal youth becomes caricature of vanity undone, and in her final years, she realizes the cruelest truth of all. The blood of countless girls bought her nothing. She dies as all do, her body frail, her beauty gone, her soul condemned in the memory of the world. When death comes, it is unremarkable. No crimson bath, no mirror-shattering climax. Only silence. Guards find her lifeless body on her bed, her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Some say she smiled faintly, as though still convinced she had won. Others insist her face twisted in horror, realizing too late that time had conquered her. However it appeared, the truth is simple. She died alone, in stone walls that were both her fortress and her grave. Her burial is quiet, stripped of grandeur. No monuments, no processions, no noble honor. The church debates whether her body deserves sacred ground. Some say she should be buried outside consecrated earth. Others compromise with unmarked grave. To this day, the location is uncertain. She vanishes into soil as her victims did, her remains scattered in silence. Yet, her story does not vanish. If anything, her death ignites it further. Legends spread across Europe, transforming fact into folklore. Some tales insist she murdered 600 girls, others fewer, others more. Some claim she drank their blood like wine, others that she bathed in vats of crimson. Woodcuts depict her as vampire, as witch, as demon. Truth bends, myth expands, but her name endures. Elizabeth Bathory, Countess of Hungary, widow, mother, noblewoman, becomes something else entirely, the Blood Countess. The woman who tried to halt time becomes timeless, her cruelty carved into memory, her story retold for centuries. She becomes symbol of vanity, of cruelty, of power corrupted, and though historians debate details, the essence never fades. She was the queen who bathed in blood to stay young. You leave her fortress at last, its stones silent, its windows barred. Snow drifts softly against the towers, muffling echoes of screams long ended, but you know the silence is deceptive. Her story still lives, whispered in taverns, sung in ballads, thundered in sermons. She is gone, but her legend remains, and perhaps that is the cruelest immortality of all. Her final years of captivity are not filled with spectacle, but with the slow, grinding monotony of silence. You step inside the chamber where she spends her days, and it is little more than a stone box. The once proud countess, who commanded vast estates and terrorized entire valleys, is now reduced to a single room with barred windows, a heavy oak door sealed with iron, and a narrow slit through which guards push her food. The same walls that once bore witness to her cruelty now contain her entirely. At first she resists the silence. She paces the room, her footsteps restless on cold stone. She shouts at guards, demanding they bring her mirror, her clothes, her jewels. When they refuse, she curses them with venom, promising vengeance when her family intervenes. She writes letters by candlelight, pleading with relatives to secure her release, warning them that her disgrace will taint them as well. Few letters are answered, and those that come are cool, distant. The Bathory family, once her shield, now holds her at arm's length, determined to preserve its own standing even if it means abandoning her. Deprived of attendance, she begins to unravel. For years she had lived surrounded by women who fetched, dressed and reassured her. Now she must comb her own hair, prepare her own bed, tend her own fire. She has not done such things since childhood. She fumbles with them clumsily, her pride wounded by every task. The guards who glimpse her through the opening watch with mingled pity and disgust. The once feared Blood Queen is now reduced to the work of servant she once despised. Yet her vanity refuses to die. Even without mirrors, she obsesses over her appearance. She rubs her skin with scraps of cloth until it reddens, convinced she can still preserve its smoothness. She dips her fingers in bowls of water and smears it across her face as though it were blood. She demands guards confirm that she looks young still, and when they laugh or remain silent, she spits curses through the slit in the wall. Her obsession gnaws at her like hunger, and hunger itself often joins the torment. Meals are meager, designed to keep her alive, but nothing more. As months become years, her body begins to betray her. Her joints ache from the damp stone, her breath shortens, her skin withers. The woman who once commanded attention at banquets now limps across her chamber, clutching the wall for support. Her hair, once thick and dark, grows wiry and white. Her eyes, once sharp and predatory, sink into hollows. She feels the passage of time with each creak of bone, each tremor of hand. The irony is cruel. She killed to preserve her youth, and now she must watch herself decay in solitude, with no blood to mask the truth. Outside her chamber, the world moves on. New wars flare, new kings rise, new scandals bloom. The villagers around Kosdai continue their cycles of harvest and famine, their bells tolling for births and deaths. Yet her name lingers in every whisper. Mothers still warn daughters not to stray, priests still thunder against vanity and sin, minstrels still sing ballads of the Blood Countess. Though her body is confined, her legend roams freely, growing with every retelling. The guards who keep vigil grow superstitious. Some claim they hear her muttering to herself in the night, speaking to unseen companions. Others swear they hear laughter low, bitter, echoing through the stones. A few believe she has made a pact with devils, that even in confinement she wields dark power. They cross themselves before entering her chamber, some refusing to go in alone. To them she is not prisoner but spectre, haunting the very room she occupies. In truth, much of her conversation is with her own memories. She speaks aloud to her attendants as though they still stand beside her. She addresses Dorka, asking her to fetch more girls. She commands Ilona to scrub the floors. She pleads with Katerina to hold the lantern steady. When no one answers, she fills the silence with her own voice, replaying rituals as if they continue. It is madness, or perhaps denial. The ghosts of her accomplices are her only company, but other ghosts crowd closer, the victims. In the quiet she hears their screams, their sobs, their prayers. Sometimes she wakes in the night, convinced the walls drip red, that basins overflow, that hands claw at her from the floor. She tries to shout them away, but they return each time the silence deepens. Whether guilt or imagination, it does not matter. They are with her always, a chorus of judgment more relentless than any court. Her decline accelerates. She eats little, sleeps poorly, shivers constantly. Guards find her collapsed on the floor more than once. Her body frail, her lips cracked. Physicians are summoned but do little. She refuses most remedies, insisting she needs only her rituals. But the basins are gone, the servants gone, the blood gone. She is left only with herself, and herself is not enough. In these last years, she oscillates between delusion and despair. Some days she rages, cursing her family, the church, the crown, the peasants. Other days she sits silent for hours, staring at the slit of sky through her window, her face blank. Occasionally she laughs, brittle and strange, muttering that she still looks young, that she has triumphed over time. But her reflection, when she dares to glimpse water in her bowl, tells another story. Her death comes quietly, sometime in the early 1610s. Guards checking her chamber one morning find her lying on the bed, her eyes open, her face pale, her hands folded across her chest. No blood, no ritual, no grandeur, only the stillness of age finally claiming her. She is in her early 50s, but years of obsession and confinement have made her seem far older. The woman who sought eternal youth dies ordinary, unremarkable, forgotten in body if not in name. Her burial is shrouded in secrecy. Some say she was interred in the family crypt, others that the church demanded her body be removed to an unmarked grave outside consecrated ground. The exact site is lost to time, and perhaps that is fitting. The earth swallows her without monument, while legend raises her higher than any stone could. For even as her body decays, her story flourishes. Pamphlets spread across Europe, each exaggerating her crimes. Some claim she murdered 600 girls, others more. Woodcuts depict her bathing in vats of blood, her face radiant and demonic. Poets describe her as vampire, as witch, as monster in human form. Historians argue, skeptics doubt, but the legend grows regardless. She becomes less Elizabeth Bathory, flesh and bone woman of Hungary, and more archetype the eternal blood countess queen who killed to stay young. And so her final years in captivity achieve what no ritual ever could: immortality. She is remembered not for her noble birth nor her estates, nor her family ties, but for the horrors whispered within her walls. Her chamber is her tomb, but also her shrine, a place where myth and memory intertwine. You stand in that chamber now, centuries later, and feel the silence pressing still. The stones remember, even if people forget. The air feels heavy, as though haunted, and in that silence, you hear again the whisper that defined her life. I will not fade, but she did, and in fading, she became eternal. The silence of her death did not end the noise of her legend. In fact, it amplified it. Once Elizabeth Bathory's body was lowered into the soil, whether in her family's crypt or in an unmarked grave beyond consecrated ground, the world outside her fortress seemed to inhale, then exhale in a rush of stories, and you walk now through that world, listening as her memory twists and spreads, carried like smoke on the wind. The peasants are the first to speak. For decades they had whispered in fear, their voices subdued by her power. Now, freed from her shadow, they speak openly. In taverns, in markets, in the fields they recount what they heard, what they saw, what they imagined. Some swear they heard screams echoing down the hills each night. Others insist they saw red water seeping from the drains of Chate after storms. Mothers recount how their daughters vanished. Fathers describe how soldiers later unearthed bones from shallow graves. Each story grows in the telling. What was once rumor becomes testimony. What was once testimony becomes legend. Priests seize upon her memory as sermon. From pulpits they thunder about vanity, cruelty, and sin. They describe her as Jezebel reborn, a woman who sought to rival God by stealing youth from others. They warn women against pride in their beauty, men against indulgence in lust, children against disobedience. In their hands she becomes less a countess than a moral fable, her story a caution etched into every homily. The peasants nod solemnly, crossing themselves as they listen, knowing her shadow is now part of their faith as much as their folklore. The nobility react differently. Some dismiss her crimes as exaggeration, insisting no woman could commit such atrocities without male accomplices. Others use her downfall as weapon, muttering that the Bathory family's influence is finally broken. Still others, in private, admit fascination. They tell her story at banquets, half in horror, half in thrill, as though tasting forbidden fruit. She becomes conversation piece, scandal, entertainment. Her name stains her bloodline, but it also keeps it infamous. You see how she becomes archetype. To peasants, she is the monster who devoured daughters. To priests, she is warning against sin. To nobles, she is scandal. To artists, she is inspiration. She ceases to be Elizabeth Bathory, woman of flesh and history, and becomes the Blood Countess, symbol of vanity, cruelty, and corrupted power. Her reality is lost beneath layers of myth, but myth ensures she is never forgotten. Centuries pass, and still her name lingers. Historians argue about numbers, about truth versus rumor. Some insist she killed hundreds, others claim far fewer, others suggest her enemies exaggerated to destroy her, but the debate itself sustains her. Each book written, each lecture given, each argument made breathes new life into her memory. She remains alive, not in body, but in narrative. In the 19th century, her legend intertwines with the birth of Gothic literature. Writers hungry for tales of blood and horror find in her story fertile soil. They describe her as vampire, as immortal monster, as noble woman who feasts upon maidens to remain forever young. She becomes cousin to Dracula, sister to Carmilla, ancestor to every femme fatale of Gothic imagination. Her baths of blood echo in novels, poems, plays. She stalks the stage, the page, the imagination. In the 21st century, her story thrives still. Films, television series, novels, and songs all retell her legend. Some portray her as monster, others as misunderstood woman. In internet corners, she becomes meme, symbol of Gothic fascination. Tourists visit the ruins of Chante, walking the crumbling walls where she once paced, whispering her name into the stone. They take photographs, light candles, tell stories. The fortress, though broken, still breathes her memory. You pause now, centuries later, in the ruins of her fortress. The stones are cracked, ivy curls through the gaps, birds nest in what were once towers. The air is still, carrying the scent of pine from the hills. Tourists tread carefully, their footsteps crunching on gravel. Some whisper nervously, others laugh, but all feel the weight of the place. The silence here is not empty, it is saturated. The walls remember, and if you listen closely, you can almost hear her voice, faint and stubborn, echoing from the stones. I will not fade. I will not. But she did fade. Her beauty rotted, her body died, her bones turned to dust. What did not fade was her name. She achieved the immortality she craved, not in the smoothness of her skin, but in the permanence of her story. And so, you close her story with a final image. The fortress crumbles, the torches are long extinguished, the basins are dry, but her name lingers in the night air, cold and sharp as frost. The peasants who feared her, the priests who condemned her, the nobles who gossiped of her, they are all gone. Only she remains, not in flesh, but in memory. Elizabeth Bathory is gone. The Blood Countess endures. The tale has now ended, and the night lies quiet again. The torches are gone, the screams have faded, and the stone fortress stands silent against the hills. All that lingers is memory, her name whispered through centuries, her legend reshaped in countless ways. Let your breath slow as you step away from those cold walls. Imagine them now softened by ivy, their sharp edges blurred by time. The echoes that once haunted them are distant, no longer sharp, no longer frightening. Only silence remains, a silence that grows gentle the longer you sit within it. Picture the hills surrounding her castle, The fields are calm, the sky vast, the stars steady. Villages that once trembled are long gone, their fears swallowed by history. The people who suffered have found peace in time's embrace. And she, who raged against aging, who fought so fiercely against the natural order, has been folded into that same quiet. Allow yourself to sink into that stillness. Her story has been told, her legend explored, and now you can let it fade into the night. The blood, the mirrors, the screams, all dissolve like mist, leaving only calm air and soft darkness. Rest in the knowledge that the past, however violent, is behind you. The fortress may remain in ruins, but for you it is only memory, a story carried on the wind. Let that story drift away, replaced by peace. Now, close your eyes. Let the night wrap around you like a blanket. The Blood Countess has faded into history. You are here, safe, quiet, ready to rest. Sleep deeply, dream gently, and let the silence of centuries cradle you. Good night, sweet dreams.